And with that, the issue that we had was, as the growing education piece around decentralization and decentralized finance started to become more and more popular, and people loved the idea of decentralization, it was very natural. We started to test and hit the boundaries and constraints of where the network would start to have this pressure boundaries. And this ultimately resulted in a bad user experience in several ways. So for example, just to name a few, as the network became more and more congested and more people came onto the network, we had an issue with slow transactions, gas prices ever elevating. And this was a big issue because the applications that we were building on top of this single chain Ethereum network was starting to suffer from the performance issues and the cost issues associated with making transaction on a decentralized platform. So the boss level, this is a big issue that we still face today. How do you convince the average human? Now, let me tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about me and my wife. My wife knows what it does. She is computer literate. She understands how the internet works, how to use apps, etc. She does all her mobile banking. She knows enough about the internet and using apps to get by every day. But I spent about 4 years of my life trying to explain to her how this network works, how decentralization works. I've spent a long time trying to explain about like network pressure, rising and falling gas prices. So, she's got this far. She understands that much. Now, we had a very interesting thing to happen to me anyway, and her a couple of weeks ago, which was, she was about to send me 0.1 ETH. And to me, this is absolutely phenomenal. You have no idea how long it took taking me to get here. And I could not be happier. Here we was, sat on the couch. She was about to send me 0.1 ETH. To me, this is a huge, huge step because she'd bought into downloading the app, topping it up with Ethereum. And now she was more excited than ever to send me 0.1 ETH. For me, this is a massive, massive step. But there was a problem. She became fixated on this. And, understandably, she wanted to read the details. That's fair, no problem. But then she saw this. Then she saw this. Then all she could think about was that. And then she looked at me, and in my mind, all I could think about was this, followed by this, and then followed a little bit by this. No, I'm just joking. I mean, it was close enough, but now we knew, me as a developer, it's a question of how do we solve this problem? Because ultimately, what my wife did was she got out her banking app and she said, I can send you that amount of money for free. And I had no comeback. So how do we get over this? How do we really onboard everyone? Which is why we're here today, because we have this greater need. We are trying to achieve this greater goal, combined goal of onboarding as many people as we can to this new world for the benefit of them, us, and everyone, and decentralization in general. So we started thinking, how do we do this? And how do we put together all the benefits of the multi-chain world? Now, just going back to what we talked about before in regards to the one chain that we had, which became congested, this is driven by the by EVM, which is the Ethereum virtual machine, and it is open source. So naturally, what people did was they took that software, they modified it, And then they started to deploy their own chains. And then more and more chains were starting to be deployed. And this started to present a problem, especially for developers, because we want to take advantage of these other chains and their low gas prices, which again removes a big problem with the fees and onboarding people. So, but there was no easy way to do this. So we at Pillar, we embarked on a mission to make this easily accessible. Say hello to Etherspot, your one-stop service to the Ethereum multiverse. So at the center of this world, we built a platform that supports Ethereum mainnet and its testnets, of course, but it also supports Polygon, Phantom, Binance Smart Chain, and XDAI. Now, we're just going to talk quickly a little bit about the infrastructure map here, because it's not magic, but it was a lot of hard work. So just going from left to right, we've got our chains, which are emitting data. We ingest this data. We then organize it and store it into hot and cold storage. From there, we have a plethora of microservices that are managing, accessing, reading, and writing this data. From then onwards, we deploy smart contracts, which, by the way, belong to the account owners and the applications. It doesn't belong to Etherspot, but we deploy these contracts for you on your behalf. And then we make all this data accessible via the Etherspot SDK, which is open source and available to use right now. And then we also have a direct link back to our API, which allows us to read certain operations quickly, and in turn, helping your applications. So what can you do? When we built this service, we had in mind you, the developers, the users, people that want to benefit from a multi-chain world without having to go through the pain of downloading several apps or downloading several services, or even running the infrastructure yourself, trying to run the infrastructure. We all know how hard that is. Does it scale? X, Y, Z. So what can you do? So here's just some of the things that will help you. So we have multi-chain balance and transactions. We got multi-chain ERC20 assets, multi-chain gas prices, ENS registration and utilities with unstoppable domain compatibility. And straight out the box, you can authenticate with MetaMask, Wallet Connect, Taurus, or your own private keys. But what can you really do? It might be quite trivial to build a service that does the things that I just previously mentioned, but these are the features of Etherspot that we think makes us stand out and makes us different. So, first of all, we've got transaction batching for gas-efficient transactions. We have payment hubs, which we'll go into more detail in a minute. We've got peer-to-peer or off-chain or layer 2 payment channels, however you want to call it, but we've got that built into the service. We have efficient contract management, and we've got the Etherspot playground, which allows you to prototype your ideas right now at no overhead or cost to you. So let's go into the first thing. We've got transaction batching for more efficient, gas-efficient operations. Now, when we send a transaction, this is how briefly it's encapsulated. We have your transaction wrapper, and inside you have your payload, which is generally your instructions on what to do. Now, when we estimate how much this transaction is going to cost, we estimate the transaction itself, and then that gives us the gas price of how much it's going to cost. With Etherspot, we batch all transactions by default. So what this means is we start a batch. You can add in there as many transactions, instructions as you want, up to the block size limit. And then that would be executed as just one transaction. For example, with a lot of DeFi products today, we need both an approval and then a transfer to move assets around through a decentralized exchange, for example. But with Etherspot, that is just one action. It would just be an approval, and you can batch together the transfer, and we will execute it as one transaction, one gas price. So the next thing, payment hubs. This is our off-chain or layer 2 liquidity mechanism. And payment hubs, in a nutshell, allows you to lock your asset amounts into the payment hub. Payment hubs can transfer to other payment hubs. So you can have as many payment hubs as you want, however your application sees fit. Any ERC20 or even ERC21 tokens are accepted. You can withdraw or settle your assets from the payment hub or onto the chain. We use a light internal ledger just to be able to perform the action of moving assets between payment hubs. And it's important to know that a payment hub is just another instance of the Etherspot SDK. So your application can take this and use it however it fits into your application. So here's how it would work in practice. You've got your payment hubs. They can transfer assets between them off-chain and, of course, gasless. And then when you're ready, you can send it back to your wallet to be settled or to hold there. And then we've got peer-to-peer payment channels. So every Etherspot SDK instance has two addresses right out of the box. You've got your assets address, and then you've got a dedicated P2P, peer-to-peer payment channel address. And this address is designed for you to separate your assets and your assets that you want to make available to provide liquidity or to send to someone else off-chain. And simply, that's how it works. We have a dedicated peer-to-peer deposit address that you can send to other Etherspot instances at no cost and no gas. Then we've got efficient contract management. So how do we deploy smart contracts? So when you first create your Etherspot SDK instance, we use the create to address opcode to calculate where your Ethereum address is going to live straight away. And then we immediately make that address available to you. From that point onwards, you can start sending assets straight away to that address before you actually start using the system properly. And that way you can start seeing funds coming in and you can start prototyping your ideas quickly. When you're ready to start using the more advanced versions and feature and functionality of Etherspot, you've got two options. Either we can deploy your smart contract on your behalf, or you can deploy it yourself. If you choose to deploy it yourself, you can simply call a specific method on the SDK, and then we will prepare that for you. Or if you allow the system to do it, we will deploy your smart contract on your first transaction. So it is a completely transparent process. If you don't want to mess around with smart contracts, you don't need to. And finally, we've got the Etherspot playground. So if you've got an idea, you can build it right now. And some of the benefits of the Etherspot playground is there's no infrastructure or software needed on your part. The whole system is based on the web. It is multi-chain ready with testnets, so you can start test driving the Etherspot SDK against XI, Phantom, and any other chains that we support. It's important to remember that Etherspot itself is EVM compatible. So if you have any other concerns or you want to talk about another chain that is EVM compatible, please, you can speak to us at any time. We also ship the Etherspot playground with testnets, and you can open as many instances as you want of the Etherspot playground that would simulate your application. So there's no limit there. When you finish with it, you can just close it. You don't need to worry about anything else. You can also debug your Etherspot-based app. So for example, if you're having some issues or you need to understand how the system works, you could, for example, load your private keys or your Etherspot authentication keys into the Etherspot playground, and it would load your instance of Etherspot on your app, for example, into the playground where you could continue to make calls and debug the responses. You can connect with MetaMask, Wallet Connect, Taurus, or your private keys straight from the Create SDK method instance. And when you're done, as mentioned before, you can throw it away when you no longer need it. Now, the interesting thing is about these platforms is people may ask, or a lot of us have experienced, generally incomplete platforms, things that don't quite work. A lot is promised, but nothing ever, we might find that certain bits of functionality is missing, and that's natural. It's such a big system and a big undertaking. This is what happens. But we want to show you a showcase of a system, of an app that does use Etherspot. And that is our own app, Pillar, which is a multi-chain crypto wallet. And this app is built entirely off the back of Etherspot. So if you haven't given it a try, go and check it out and see Etherspot in action and working. So I'd just like to end this presentation and give you 2 links to try now. We got try.etherspot.dev, which is our SDK playground, which you can go right now and start prototyping your ideas, messing around with the SDK, having a look at the methods, see what you can do, try out different chains, testnets, etc. And it's also worth mentioning that our SDK playground, try.etherspot.dev, has its own POA testnet called Etherspot with a built-in faucet. So it's minimal effort from your part. And then also we've got docs.etherspot.dev, which is our user guide and documentation, and also includes examples of sending, receiving, also has 4 examples of how to build bridges and peer-to-peer payment mechanisms. And that's all from me. So thank you for attending. I really appreciate it. And we can't wait to see what you build. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That was a really terrific presentation. If you wouldn't mind, we can start taking some questions from the chat, seeing that we have a few minutes left before the very end of the session here. A question from Michael from the Discord, from the Zoom chat. Does this wallet provide cross-chain swaps, or is it just for storage of different chain assets?
I would say it's just storage for different chain assets at this moment in time. In terms of swapping, I mean, if you really want to go deep, we ultimately do provide like the sort of nuts and bolts to be able to do something like that. But you would have to build a swapping mechanism yourself. But for holding the assets, that is definitely what we can do.
Sounds great. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to type them in the chat now. Or if you don't have any questions at the moment, but you would like to ask some more, the Pillar sponsor channel is always open in the ETHGlobal Discord for you to ask any questions. And
totally, we're there.
Yep. And Kieran and his good friends and colleagues will be sure to tend to your questions there. And well, once again, I really want to thank you again, Kieran, for that amazing presentation.
No problem, anytime.
And thanks to everyone for attending.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
Goodbye, everyone.